Hello everyone, I'm Hannah Eden and welcome to the Unleashed podcast. In these short episodes, I sit down with my COO, Erica, and we reflect and she asks me questions about my career over the last decade. I've been in the fitness industry for a long time. I started my own gym in 2015 and I branched into the online fitness space in 2017. Let's just say that I have learned a lot along the way. I've had many successes and many failures. And the goal of these short episodes is to share all of that with you. And my hope is that it can inspire you, it can support you, or maybe even teach you a couple of things that you can implement into your own business so that you can grow too. So stick around and listen up if you want to learn more.
Hello, Hannah. Welcome back.
Hello, Miss Sin. It's good to be here. How you doing?
I am doing very well. I'm so excited to A, see you, of course, and B, also get the skinny on, a little thing you did recently. I guess it would be considered little. Your
Just a
Ironman.
wee thing. All right. Well, I'm so excited. I feel weird. It's been so long. I kind of checked out for what feels like a month, and it's good to be home and to catch up on all the things.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it was like such this big goal that you were working up to for such a long time. And like now that it's done, you're like, oh, where are my days now? Right.
It's true. It's true. And then it's also not true, right? Because the last 3 weeks I just checked out. I wasn't training. I was doing like different styles of workouts, just a few here and there, eating a lot of cheese, drinking a lot of wine. And those days I'm like, what do I do with all this time? And now I'm home. Of course, catch up's been crazy, but now it's time to get back in the gym. So today is day one for training for the final race of the year, which is World Championships in December. But luckily this time, I say it's only a half Ironman, but it's still obviously a really intense thing, but it's nothing quite like the full.
Right. All right, so let's get into it. I want to hear the deets on your race. And so I thought kind of the easiest way for us to talk about this is just kind of like taking you through the race as far as like benchmarks that I know. And then of course you can fill in the gaps. So let's just start pre-race. What were you feeling? What were your biggest thoughts? Kind of what was going through your head at that point?
Oh my gosh, pre-race. Okay. So a lot of cool things about this happened pre-race, and I'm so fucking glad they did. So I have a godmother. Her name is Sadie. She's actually technically my brother's godmother, but she feels like a godmother to me too. And I grew up with her. So I got to see her do some really crazy shit when I was growing up, especially the Ironman. Like she's done a couple full Ironmans and done a shit ton of half Ironmans and triathlons. And I remember growing up and watching her do these things and just thinking like, it's an absolutely insane thing. It's like superhuman ability to be able to do something like this. So, here I am 25 years later, doing my first Ironman for the first time. And whenever I started training for this, it's a funny story, but she actually called my mom without me knowing and was like, Kathy, you have got to stop Hannah from doing this. Like she should not be doing this right now. She just had a fucking baby. Like this is so much. This is stupid. This is dangerous. And my mom, being my incredible mom, didn't tell me, obviously, because my mom knows me. I'm going to do it whether you like it or not. And so she didn't want to rock my confidence. So she didn't say anything. And then I guess I find this out while I'm in Italy, right? Like a week later or 2 weeks later, Sadie's like watching me and watching what I'm doing on training. And she calls my mom back and goes, I'm a fucking idiot. I should ignore everything I said. If there's anyone that's going to be doing this, it's Hannah. Like she absolutely can do this. And I want to be there to support her. So I was so grateful that Sadie actually flew from England and met us in Italy. And she's like this beacon of inspiration for me. She's always been someone that I look up to. She's absolutely batshit crazy in the best way. She's nuts. And I've always kind of looked up to her in many different ways growing up. So having her there was really important as far as my confidence. But also the next few things I'm going to tell you pre-race day were pivotal, right? Full disclosure, before doing this full Ironman, the only ever triathlon I have done is a half Ironman, right?
Right.
I tried to do a warm-up sprint. It got canceled because of weather. So my first triathlon ever is a fucking half Ironman in Hawaii. I live in Texas where we have a lot of lakes, but I'm not close to the ocean here, okay? So I have actually never, up until this point, I had never swam in the ocean. My training was just in the pool. So we get to Sevilla, which is where the location was. And I had
Mhm.
training on my taper week, which was, get in the ocean, do a 30-minute swim, make sure you test and build your bike and ride your bike and go on runs. And oh my God, the day we get there, it's just fucking grim weather. It's so gray, it's raining, it's so windy. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to get in the ocean. We go to the ocean and Sadie's like, I think it's really important that we get in, that you get your wetsuit on and that we just get our feet wet. We go to the ocean and it is so lethally dangerous. The waves are so high, they're going out for so long that we couldn't swim past the where the waves were breaking because it was so dangerous. And I just remember looking at it going, oh my God. And all of this fear takes over me. And I'm like, oh my fucking God, I have to swim 2.5 miles in this thing. Like, I'm going to die. I'm going to drown, all these things. So we don't get in 2 days before race day.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, let's give it till tomorrow. And tomorrow we have to get in, even if it's just literally to get our feet wet, just so I can understand what it feels like to be in an ocean. So the next day we go back, it's still rough, but nowhere near as rough as it was the day previously. And I get in the water with Sadie and she's like, put your goggles on, we're going to spot. Because I was telling her that I find it really hard to swim in a straight line. So she's like, well, I need to help you do that. And she starts to do it. And I start swimming and I just go into straight panic mode. There's waves coming at me. I'm being pushed in different directions. It's like muddy because it's so rough. So I can't see anything. My goggles are fogging up. And she stops me and she's like, Hannah, I need you to look at me. And I bet in her mind, she was so calm and so Sadie, like, right, okay, here's what you need to remember. Just remember this. Arms are parallel. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I know how to swim, but I'm getting in the water and I'm like, just like forgotten everything to do with training, forgotten how to swim, having a full-blown panic attack. And luckily we stayed in, things got calmer. She really helped me. She also tried to fuck with me and be like, you're going to feel this, and people pushing me everywhere because there's always people around you and I need you to stay calm. And so I'm so glad that we got in the water pre-race because it totally built my confidence. And then 24 hours goes by and it was like, the universe was like, here is the perfect ocean for you to swim in, because morning of race day, it was like glass. There was no waves. It was just so bizarre how all of that happened, but it was a good lesson. It was a good, reminder that it's going to be okay. And yeah, I'm just so glad that she was there because all of the self-doubt and the insecurities about me being there were just like screaming and screaming and screaming in my head. So it felt really good to have someone there to rely on.
Yeah, she was your Yoda. She was
my Yoda. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna tell her that. She's gonna love
that. Wow. I mean, that's crazy. And like, how lucky are you to have had that prior to? Because like, imagine if you were trying to do that on your own and just trying to calm yourself down. I mean, I have no doubt you still would have been able to do it, but probably that just helps so much to have that boost of confidence by your side. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then little keynote to add about like being a mom doing all this, right? So there's my journey with the race that's happening and the physical things that I'm going to have to do. And then there's like the real life, right? Where I have this baby that's there. Brix was with us, of course. Paolo and I and Brix were sharing a bed in this hotel room and he wasn't sleeping. It was like the jet lag was just fucking with him. It was fucking with all of us. And he was not sleeping at all, like every hour awake, crying. And it's like 3 days before the race, I'm like, man, I haven't had a sleep score above like a 30. My HRV is so unbalanced. Like, this is not safe to do this. Like, I need to get recovery before I start something that's already going to be pushing me way beyond my limits. I was almost like scared that I was going to die if I didn't start with like a recharged battery. And so my mom and Sadie were sharing a room and they're like, give us Brix and you sleep. So 2 nights before, they're like, you need to have sleep 2 nights before. Typically the night before a race, you've got anxiety, you're anxious, you're spinning, and you may not sleep well. But the day before that, it's imperative that you get a good night's sleep. So I'm like, yes, okay, I'm going to give the baby to them. I know he's just like a couple doors down. If anything happens, I'm here, but I can sleep. And of course, I can't fucking sleep. I'm awake. I start spiraling with my thoughts. We're like staying in this really, not old by any means, but like this classic Italian hotel. The server the night before was kind of creepy. And I'm like, oh my God, is this place haunted? There's going to be this. I'm in the haunted hotel. I can't sleep. I look at the clock and it's fucking 4 a.m. I literally slept like 2 hours, which again was like, oh my gosh. But thankfully the night before the race, I actually slept decently and had a good night's sleep. So I started with, I think like my sleep score was like 80, and I was like, all right, I'll take it. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's not bad. And so that was the mum side of things was really stressful as well.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's not like you're balancing all these things before, so why wouldn't it happen right before the race as well, you know? Yeah, I mean, that sounds intense, but obviously, all right, you've gotten there, you're at the race, you're at the start line in your wetsuit. What's like the one word you would say that was sort of consuming your mind at the time?
Yeah, I do this all the time when I'm nervous. It's almost now to like a fault. It's this really weird place to be, but day before race, I try and focus on the fact that I just need to be calm. I'm courageous. I'm ready. I'm calm. I'm courageous. I'm ready. It's like on and repeat, on repeat, on repeat. And the day before, you've got like to-do lists and stuff to do. But the biggest part is to remind myself, like, I've done all the training. I kept looking at that number that I calculated of the miles that I've put in. Don't allow the voice inside the monologue that you're not ready. You skipped this training session. You didn't do this. You didn't. That's all bullshit, right? I'm as ready as I'm going to be. And
Yeah.
so race day, I'm on that loop. I'm calm, I'm courageous, and I'm ready. I'm calm, I'm kind, I'm courageous, and I'm ready. Over and over and again. And I get to this like really internally peaceful state. And it's almost like weird because I just feel like I'm like flatlined, which is maybe a good place to be. But I kept thinking, like, as I'm in the cage, right? They have these cages that are on the beach and you estimate how long you're going to take to do the swim. So you go in order so you can kind of stick with the similar pacing of where you think you're at. And I'm just like weirdly calm. I'm like not feeling anything. My heart's not really beating fast. I'm like, shit, I should probably try and get hyped up, right? Like, all right, yeah. And this time around, it was awesome because in Hawaii, once I set off for the swim, I was on my own. I didn't see my family till I got out of the water. This one, they were following me as the cage is going in and the people are chanting. It's like the fucking energy in this cage is insane. It was so insane. Meanwhile, I'm feeling like, I'm like, okay, I gotta get something going. And I do. I stay really calm. I keep grabbing the baby. The baby's reaching for me. So I'm like in and out of trying to get in the zone and still being here with my family. And it was almost like at first overwhelming, but then really comforting, knowing like you're not alone. And then everyone starts to make a friend. You're like in silence, waiting for 20 minutes in this cage as it goes forward. And as you get closer, I'm like, hi, what's your name? And you start talking to someone around you, hoping that they speak English. Because it's majority of it is men, right? There was something like 2,300 people that were doing the full Ironman, and there was only 400 women. So
Oh, wow.
majority of people around you are men, and they're like really intense and they're going. And so I just find the closest woman that spoke English. I start to talk to her, and there's something really calm about that. And then before you know it, I'm in my cage, my aisle, my row, right? And it's beep, 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 go. And I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go. Okay. All right. Start my watch, get in the water and try and stay as calm as possible. You could see people running, trying to run in water. I'm like, I won't do that. I'm going to walk in and start swimming as soon as I can.
Okay. And let's see. So it's a 2.5 mile swim.
2.4 mile swim. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there, I mean, like how different did it feel from your training once you did start swimming?
A lot different. You know, a lot of things were happening that were working against me. And I had the choice to freak out or just handle the, like deal with the hand of cards I was dealt, right? My goggles kept fogging up. And you and I have spoken about this before. We have Asian eyes. They have Asian frames for glasses. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that is why my goggles fog up. Because Sadie would wear my goggles and they wouldn't fog up. She'd wear her own goggles, they wouldn't fog up. I tried both, and in fucking 3 minutes, I'm like, can't see anything. So my goggles kept fogging up, which was very, very, very stressful and disorientating. And so I'm like, man, this is really weird. At first, I try and ignore it, which I can't because I don't have a black line that I can follow like I can in a swimming pool.
Yeah.
And so I just accepted that in order for me to be able to do this well, I need to stay calm and every 3 to 4 minutes, stop, tread water, and wipe my goggles. Of course, in my mind, I'm like, well, that's going to add so much time to my swimming, you know, like it's going to really slow me down. But it was just the reality of where I was at until I figure out a better pair of goggles to swim with next time. So it was a lot of that. People are all over you. So it's really hard to kind of get into a flow. All of a sudden you feel that you're getting there and you bump into someone's feet with your head and it's like, fuck, okay, let me find myself again. And it was just this like really intense setting where all of these different variables are trying to throw you off your game. And my biggest strength to rely on was just staying calm and trying to take that flatline thing that I thought was a problem with me and like zone into that and just find my groove. And, you know, you're in race mode, adrenaline's pumping. You're not sure if it's, I can't see my watch because my watch is underneath my wetsuit. I don't know if it's been 5 minutes or if it's been 20 minutes or an hour, right? And I knew that it was going to take me, I thought it was going to take me around 90 minutes to do the swim. And you have corners that you turn. So it's yellow buoys. Every time you see a big red buoy, it means you turn. Or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. But I was just like, mate, wait a second. I haven't seen a turning buoy. That means I've got 4 more sides to complete, right? Because you've got to go around. There was that. And then I remember on the final stretch, which is so frustrating, but I guess I found it. I found my flow. I accepted that I couldn't see. I got that, like wiping the goggles down and as efficient as I possibly could. I was reaching and like elongating every stroke and feeling like I was in the pool, but it took 3/4 of the distance to get to that place. And then before you know it, you see the big Ironman banner, there's people cheering, there's cowbells going, and you hear the music, and then you just swim home, baby, swim home. And it was so cool. It was such a cool thing for me. I got out an hour and 22, so a little quicker than I had hoped, but still not as quick as it could have been if I didn't have to wipe my goggles. I felt really good. And then it was time to move on and go to T1, transition 1.
And how was that first? Did that transition feel like your practice? You know, did it feel different? I mean, I assume once you're out of the water, it's kind of like, all right, this is a little bit more manageable.
Yeah. The goal was to get out of the water feeling warmed up, right? You don't want to feel like you've gone if you have an effort level of 1 to 10, I want to be around that like 5 to 6. If I'm anywhere near the 7 to 8, my heart rate's too high and it has to stay there now for the next 20 hours or however long it was going to take me, right? So I'm like, okay, all right, heart rate's exactly where I need it to be. I'm feeling calm, feeling good. I'm just going to gracefully go to transition. And one of the transitions, I don't remember which one, I ran past my bike and Sadie had told me, I need you to take a picture of where you put your bike and your bags, and I need to visualize it when you go to bed tonight. And then I look up and I hear everyone screaming, and I'm like, who? So I find my bags. I have done what Sadie told me to do, right? I'm like giving myself a high five. She's like, as you get out the water, I need you to take your earplugs out and your goggles out, put them in your hat, hold onto your hat, pull your wetsuit out so it gets stuck in the sleeve of your wetsuit, take it off slowly. And I'm like, yeah, I did it. Yeah, I did it. I did it. I didn't forget that. And just boosting my confidence as that was happening. I took my wetsuit off. I've got my kit underneath. I do realize immediately though, that I don't have pockets in my kit. I was very foolish and didn't check that because my tri-suit from Hawaii had all these pockets in the back. So I was able to store all my food there. I'd already prepped my bike. I had my breast pump in my bag. I had my electrolytes ready. I had all my meals planned out. I had my, 400 calorie drink to chug in the transition area. I'm doing all the things, but I shove all my gels in my bra because I don't have those pockets. And I go off on the bike. I get on the bike and it was pretty seamless. At first I'm walking, then I'm watching everyone around me like start to jog. I'm like, I should probably start jogging. I start jogging with my bike, get on my bike and I go. And that was it, into the countryside and winding through vineyards and seeing pink flamingos and salt flats and just seeing so many cool things in the countryside of Italy.
Yeah, I mean, shout out Sadie, MVP.
Yes.
We're just like giving you really easy, tangible steps to like, just things that you're like, all right, these are little, these are simple. And it like helps you're in the right place and that you're, on the right road.
Exactly.
And then the bike is how long?
112 miles.
112 miles. Okay. So I guess like kind of backing up, of all the parts of the Ironman, what was the part that you felt most confident in? Was it the biking, the running, the swimming?
From my experience in Hawaii, the bike was my strongest suit. However, in the second training block, preparing for the fall from the half, in training, my running was my biggest strength. My running had the most improvement. I felt so strong after really long brick workouts, 6 hours on the bike, I'd get off and crush it on the run. So I felt a lot of confidence for the run, but I knew that the bike is really the main meat of it, because you can have the best swim and the best bike up until the last mile, but if something goes wrong or you fall, like there's so much risk on the bike. And of course the run is like, it's almost like starting the race again when you start running, because you've got a full fucking marathon to do. But I felt really confident about the bike.
Yeah. Okay. And so was there any point within your biking experience where you were like, okay, now I'm getting tired? I mean, what was the bike leg of it like for you?
Honestly, I'm so proud to say no. Like, I felt so strong on that bike. I knew that the majority of the course was flat. I had been told about this one hill, and it was 2 loops that we had to do. So we were repeating the same terrain twice. So I knew I had to do this hill twice, which I actually was stoked about after I did it the first time. But in my mind, I'm like, it's a 200-meter hill. It's not that bad. And then I get to the hill and I'm like, holy fuck, this is so much further than 200 meters. This is so hard. But I didn't struggle. It was burning. It was hurting. At this point, I'm going into coach mode, right? There's people struggling around. I'm like, let's go. Like getting everyone hyped up. There's Brazil, because you see the flag of where people are from. And it's really tiny, but I see, let's go Brazil. Let's go Switzerland. Let's go UK, you know, and it was really cool. And I started to just feel really confident that my training was working. Yes, it hurt, but I was always able to keep going. I never got to a point where I was like, I need to stop. I was just like in the pain cave, but like in a weird, sick fuck way, like kind of enjoying it, and stayed really consistent. I was watching people stand up and try and like muscle it out, but it was too long. I cranked my gears to the easiest it could be, and my legs were moving so fast. I wasn't moving very far, but I was able to sustain that, and was actually like overtaking these massive men that were trying to muscle it through and then having to stop, you know? And on the hill, they planted all these incredible pieces for you to try and get distracted, right? There's no music allowed whenever you're doing an Ironman. So they have this old man with what's the thing's called? And they're like
an accordion
singing, and it's like this like traditional Italian music. He's singing in Italian and he's playing an accordion. I'm like, thank you, this is fucking awesome. And then at the end of the hill, when you just about like, I cannot do this anymore, you arrive into this tiny little town, and there's people screaming at you, forza, forza, in Italian. They've got cowbells ringing, and it's just like the perfect timing for everything. And then you're going through cobble streets and you get to kind of recover, and there's an aid station. So it's like you're rewarded emotionally after this really physical part of the race. And that was kind of the hardest, but the most exciting part for me. The rest of it was very flat, very fast, perfect conditions. And a lot of time to think, honestly.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question for you. What were you thinking about? Because there is no music. And like, for me, I don't know. Like, I remember when I got my first tattoo ever, and I was in a ton of pain because I got on my ribs, because, you know, that's real smart. And I was singing Since You've Been Gone to myself in my head on repeat, literally just like that line over and over for an hour. So what were you thinking about in your head during that whole time?
Oh man, so much. And just to paint a picture, right? It took me just under 6 hours to complete the bike. So I think it was like 5:40 something. So there's a lot of time. So at first it's just feeling so much gratitude and just being so elated by this scene that I'm in. Like I mentioned before, I remember going first on the bike, and there's pink flamingos, and they tell you about it. It was like a historic site at this area of where we were, where the area was famous for the salt that they make. It's like this sweet salt. So you see the salt flats, you see these pink flamingos, and it's just stunning. Like the view is stunning. Then you keep going, and then to my right, I have these really old guys with their big Italian bellies with a cigarette hanging out their mouth, and they're farming grapes. They're harvesting their grapes. They've got this old, like, rickety truck, and in the back of the truck, there's just thousands of grapes. And it was just such a cool experience to witness all these old broken down like traditional buildings and architecture that were just so traditionally Italian. It was just so cool. And then once the joy of like the scene and everything kind of fades, or it starts to become pretty similar of everything you see, then you go like inwards, right? And there was a lot of conversation in my head, almost like I talk to myself, which I don't know if anyone else does that, but I literally talk to myself of like, why are you doing this, Hannah? And Paolo had really challenged me the night before with some questions that came up. And I'm like, man, you got great timing on how you plant these seeds, right? And it's all on camera, by the way, for the docuseries that we'll be releasing with iFit. But he said something like, you know, I recognize this pattern in you. And whenever you're searching or seeking for answers, or you feel conflicted, you always decide to like do something hard. And it's always in a time of like confusion or doubt or whatever it is. Like, why do you do that? And I'm like, touche, motherfucker. You're right. I do. Never really looked at it like that. Cool. Lewa, that's a great question to sit with tomorrow. And that's where I went. So I went into that of like, why did you do this, Hannah? You signed up 3 to 4 months postpartum. You have a 1-year-old at home. Like, you know, this couldn't have been a harder time to choose to do something like this. Like, why now? Why now? And I just started going down that rabbit hole, you know, like really starting to ask myself, why do you do these things? And it just became so apparent to me that whenever I do feel like I'm lost, or like I need to find myself or answers for something that's happening in my life, I always do this because it gives me a chance to face and like meet myself on the other side. It gives me a chance to like really understand who am I, rather than like wallowing in sadness or anger or confusion. I like to push myself because I feel like that's where I have the most clarity, and that's the time I get to like face myself and see myself as whoever I'm showing up to be or evolving to become at the end of that journey. And so it was very much a lot of that. And I was at the beginning, thinking that I was going to have to leave this side of myself behind, and this Ironman was going to be it, and this is the end of this journey for me. And then I just realized that that's a fucking story that either I've heard or made up in my mind, and that's not true at all, which is why I'm so happy to hang up my shoes, because it's not over, right? It's just on pause for this stage in my life after Worlds. But there was a lot of that. So it was like, I'm not doing this to try and win. I'm not trying to do this for first, second, or third place. I'm doing this so I can see who I am in this stage of my life, and like really reflect on being a mom, and what kind of mom do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be at this stage of my life? And like looking into the future with so much clarity, and being so content with who I see, what I see, and like what the endless possibilities are for me. And it was very positive. So I don't know why I need to push myself through really extreme, hard, pain, dark places to find that. Maybe I should try a different technique, but for now, it works out great, you know?
I mean, it's fun to set goals, and what you discover about yourself along the way is, I think, something really special. And, you know, that's the joy in it. It's the journey, right? It's the failures. It's like, I had a terrible lifting day yesterday, and I was like so down on myself about it. And it's just like, all right, that's one day, right? And you get up, you get past it. And, you know, when you're on the other side of it, you're like, okay, like, hey, I'm doing something pretty cool. You know, this is pretty epic that I'm doing this, and I'm just proud of myself for making that effort. And so, yeah, I mean, you had a lot of time to think about that and articulate that in your own head.
And it's true, exactly what you just said. I think the lessons that I've learned in fitness go hand in hand for life and for business. You know, like just like you said, like things do get hard. When you set a goal that's so extreme, it's not going to always be up. And it's not about race day. That was something that kept coming up for me as well. Like, it's not about being in Italy and doing this triathlon at all. Like, this is like the glory and the victory lap, right? But it's about I think it was like 1900 miles that I've put in to get to here. Like, who did I become on that journey, right? Who did I find, or what edges or seams was I able to burst out of and like evolve into? And the training really showed me what I'm capable of. The struggles and triumphs really show me that I can overcome. And same thing with your training session, right? It's like those parts of the journey are almost more valuable than the easy days, because those change you on a soul level, that help you understand, like, I can do hard things. I am able to do this. And for me, being able to do all of that with style and grace and in a way that it doesn't impact anyone negatively in my life was a big thing for me. Maybe something that I've tried to overcome from childhood. Like my shit is no one else's shit. And
Yeah.
I can't make this a bad experience for anyone else. So, you know, so much of that was coming up for me on the bike.
Yeah. Well, what a great therapy session that was. Your bike ride. So okay, bike ride, you feel good. You're making your second transition into your running. What's that second transition like as you head into your run?
Yeah. So I pumped at the beginning, well, like at the end of the first loop, and then I pumped again at the end of the second loop. So I knew that I just needed to flush the boobs out. So there was something really empowering about that happening. I also had to stop at an aid station, put them in, and I was surrounded by men, and they were like, "What the fuck is she doing?" And I'm putting these breast pumps in, and whatever, cool. So that felt good. Like, wow, like I'm a mom, my kid, I'm still feeding a kid. I'm burning more calories by breast pumping along the way. There was this like such a cool feeling that came along with that, and just feeling so much confidence and empowerment when I'm seeing other women on the course as well. So I get to T2 and I change. And at this point, I feel like some burning in my chest, but I don't think much of it. And now restocking my gels, right? That because I start eating gels only really on the run, not on the bike. I'm drinking my fuel and eating my fuel in solids. So then I'm stuffing my bra again with more fuel. That's not just applesauce, but it's these metal packets, really. And I start the run. And at first, adrenaline's pumping. You're surrounded by all these people. Music's loud at transition area. I get a little too excited. I look down at my watch. I feel like I'm running slow, but I'm running at a 7.5 minute mile. And I'm like, this is not sustainable for a full marathon. Dial it back. And now we've got 4 loops to do, which I don't know if that's a mind fuck or if that's kind of nice, because you see the same people with the same signs. You look forward to certain parts of the race, like the environment that you're in, bathed by trees, or you're going to be by the beach, or you're going to be in the city and see people giving you pre-workout, and like everyone in Italy smokes. So you're like running through clouds of cigarette smoke, which was kind of nauseating, but kind of also really, really cool in some way. And yeah, so the loop's happening. So the first loop, I know where my family is. I know where my team is. Like I know where everyone is. So it feels good. But then I start to, each loop's about 6 miles. And I almost complete the first loop and I see everyone, and I was hurting so bad. And I, for some reason, had this number in my head of wanting to stick to like a 9-minute mile, which is very aggressive to be able to complete 26.2 miles after all the other stuff that I've done. And at this point, it's what, 1 hour and 22. I'm almost at 7.5 to 8 hours of exercise. It's a long time. Now I'm going to run a full marathon, and I haven't really stopped at all. The only time I stopped was to put a breast pump in and to change my shoes, which are not recovering. You're still moving. And so at this point, I'm going into a really dark place. And I remember running past everyone and looking at Amy and Steve and looking at Paolo and being like, I'm hurting so bad. And as soon as I vocalized audibly where I was at, everything started crashing down inside. The conversation in my head was so dark, so like mean to myself. Like, you're a fucking idiot. What are you doing? You should not be here. What a selfish thing to do at this time in your life. You're a horrible mother. You're wasting your time here. This is going to be so embarrassing. People doubted you. You knew you couldn't do this. I don't know why. It was just like so dark, like crying, so sad. My body was hurting. It hurt so bad. And it lasted like that, Erica, for 16 miles.
No.
For 16 fucking miles, I was like bullying myself. I was able to switch the narrative, but the real narrative, not the fake conversation in my head. The real conversation in my head was still really dark. My body was hurting so bad. And then I was like, okay, Hannah, at like mile 10, I'm like, okay, you know for a fact that the way you talk to yourself inside of your mind is going to determine what happens outside of your body. So quit this fucking pity party, get your head out of your ass and start being nice to yourself. Like, look at what you've been able to do. And I started to switch the narrative. You are a new mom and you're here in Italy. Your son is there. You get to hold him and love him and be with him after this. You've been working towards this for the last 8 months. You've achieved so many things along the way. You've become such an incredible person on the way. I start to switch the narrative. But it honestly took me another 6 miles for my body to respond to the conversation. But I forced myself to stay in this good place. And I will never forget it. I had like one more loop to go. I was getting to the end of my last loop, or at the end of the third loop, and then I had one more to go. And there's this sign, because you pass the same spot every time, right? And it's like, your final loop to the finish line, take a left. The loop 2, 1, 2, and 3 go to the right. And it was like so defeating every time. You're like, fuck, I got to do it again. And then it switched. I saw this chick. She was like dancing behind me, and we would like do this little dance together. And she looked so good. She was like pushing this pace. I'm like, this is amazing. I look down, it's like 9-minute miles, 9.5-minute miles. And I'm like, man. So I start to befriend her, and she's Italian, barely speaks English. I'm like, on her kit, it said girl power. And I'm like, gilling her knuckles. I'm like, girl power, let's go. And just really feeding off of each other's energy. And then I suddenly had this thought. I was like, oh my God, is she on loop 1 or is she on loop 4? What if I'm going too fast? What if she's going too fast and we're pushing each other? And then we find out that we're both on our final loop. We're about to enter into our final loop. And then something changed. And I had this thought. I'm like, listen, this shit fucking hurts. Every single step hurts so bad. And it's not like you're going to get to a place where it's like, oh, I feel good now. Like the only time you're going to feel good is when you're done. So let's hurry this hurt up and let's move faster so we can be done quicker. And just that easy, such an obvious statement. I'm like, okay, so I do. And then I go from like a 10 to 10.5-minute mile to I'm going to hold this 9 to 9.5-minute mile pace until I'm fucking done. And this is my glory lap. I know exactly what's coming. I know exactly how this is going to feel. I have 6 miles left. I know when there's a slight incline. I know when I get to bathe under these beautiful trees, and I'm going to be real woo-woo and try and soak in all the tree bathing energy I possibly can. I know there's beautiful lights everywhere. Like I knew what was coming. So I had this psycho grin on my face for the entire final lap. And I was pushing hard, and adrenaline took me over that finish line. And when I got to go down that, take a left to go onto the red carpet where you've just got this tunnel of people that are screaming for you. It's now dark. There's all these lights coming at you. I was cheesing so big. I see my family. I'm like crying. I am like, this is why you've done this. You've made it. You can do this. And it was just such an amazing feeling. And I was like, wow, I feel good. I look down. It's like an 8-minute mile pace. I'm fucking sprinting. I'm like, woo. And then before you know it, I'm done. It's over. And I'm like, holy shit. And then things took a turn then.
I mean, yeah, and I'm not going to compare my one marathon that I've done to an Ironman, but I feel like
it is the same.
There's the crying point. There's always the crying point. And I remember mine was, I saw a lady being carted off around mile 19, and and then I started sobbing. I was like, just take me with you. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'm so over this. And like, there is something about that energy of like seeing the people around you eventually at some point. And I remember my kickstart was these 2 ladies. I was in my 20s at the time doing this. 2 ladies in their 60s just walk past me, happy as clams, just like la 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 la, having a conversation, keep going. And I was like, oh my God, like get out of your head, just go, just finish this thing and be done with it. And like, but yeah, you get to the end and you're just like, wow, I did that. I did that, you know?
Yeah. All the tears started coming, and I was so like in another world. And I knew there was a bell for the first timers. And I couldn't find the bell. It's pitch black. There's like these LED lights coming to me. And then I had this thought. I was like, I feel really like fucked up right now. Like this is a really out of body experience. And this feeling is like beyond depletion. What if I have like a seizure if I look at the light? So I immediately like covered my eyes. I'm like trying not to look up. I'm like, oh my God, something's going to trip. A fuse is going to trip in my brain if I look at that light. So I didn't really know where I was. And once I finished, at first I'm smiling. I'm like, I feel so good. And as soon as I stop, there's these medics. And I'm like, they grab my hand, and I just start projectile vomiting, throwing up so hard. They will over a wheelchair. They make me sit in this wheelchair, and they're like, you need to come to the AIDS tent. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm fine. I just did a fucking full Ironman. I'm fine, you know? And they let me go, and I couldn't move. And I knew, and it makes a lot of sense. your family aren't there. You're on this tunnel, you can see your family, and then you get to the finish line, and then you go to an athlete area. They want to make sure you're okay, right? You can't leave the athlete area until they like give you the green light. There's this line, there's all these people smiling with their medals around their neck, and they're about to take a picture in front of the Ironman. I'm like, I don't want a picture. I like bypass the picture. I sit down and I'm like, my son is on the other side of this wall. All my family are there. But I just need a moment. First of all, I need a moment because I don't feel good, but I also want to sit here and just process for just like a few minutes before I go into reality. What the fuck you just did? Like, it's at 11 hours and 44 minutes. I'm looking at my watch like, holy shit. I have never, ever done anything like this. There's no better feeling than all those moments and miles and minutes and hard time that you've put in to try and get here was all worth it. Like, you just fucking did this, and your goal was to do this in 12 to 15 hours, and it's 11:44. Like, what the fuck? This is amazing. So I did sit with that for a moment. I could not move. I'm now freezing, right? Because my body's in shock. And then I start to walk outside. I see all my family, and I couldn't do anything. And it was the hardest part for me because all I had envisioned, which is even funnier, as I'm seeing people sit at the cafes sipping on their Aperol spritz and their champagne, I'm like, when I'm done, I'm going to have a fucking drink. We're going to party all night, and I'm going to hug my baby, and we're going to like, woo, hit the streets of Italy. I'm done, and I can't even get off the floor. The thought of alcohol is like nauseating. My mouth is just full of the taste of throw up. I've pissed all over myself all day. Definitely probably shit myself a little bit. I don't know. Like, it was such a bizarre feeling of like, I can hear Brixton crying. He wants me to hold him, but I can't move. My whole body was just like, I sat on the ground. My mom was there. I cried because I was like, I need my mom. Like, I felt like such a baby. Like, this little girl arrived, and I couldn't hold my son. It was the most heartbreaking experience over and over again. We get in the van. I had to try and walk to the van. Walking is so fucking hard at that point. And he's crying for me, reaching out for me. And I'm looking at him like, I can't. And it was such a devastating feeling because that's all I was looking forward to, you know? And then I undo my kit when I get back to the hotel room, and I get in the shower. First of all, I have hundreds of bugs all over me because I was like cycling and running through swarms of bugs, which is gross. And I put water on my body, and all of a sudden I just like internally start screaming because I look down, I still got scars everywhere. And I have these lacerations all over my chest because I didn't have those pockets. I put the gels in my bra, and then the friction of running, literally like deep slices all over my skin and my chest. I'm not going to flash or anything, but I have scars everywhere where they're just bleeding. And I'm in the water. I have to sit on the ground. I'm like rocking back and forth in the shower for literally an hour before I felt even remotely like a human being again. And finally I was able to get up. I washed my body, washed my face, washed my teeth, washed my hair, and get out of the shower. And I'm able to finally hold Bricks and like rock him to sleep and just go to sleep with him. But it was such a hard thing that I wasn't quite ready for. And it was probably the most painful part of the whole experience emotionally, to be honest.
I mean, your body just did this incredible thing, and it was obviously pushing it past any limits that it physically thought that it could do. So it really just turns into a mental battle at that point. And like, I mean, first of all, so proud of you for having done this, and like so proud. I think anyone watching or listening to this knows you and how hard you worked, and like the hours you put in, the miles you put in, and like, you know, being able to take even those few minutes to yourself. I mean, yes, it was an hour of you just like trying to reassemble your body and your mind in the shower, but like that, I mean, just like sit in that for a bit, you know, and just like so proud of you. Like, I'm gonna cry. I'm like, it's just so amazing what you've done. So and like also thank you for taking us on your journey with you. I think like a lot of us have seen that, and not to say that any of us have experienced it, because you know, I just like saw you working hard, and I'm like, you go, girl, you do the damn thing.
I appreciate all the love and support, honestly, during this journey too. And there was split opinions, you know, there was a lot of voices saying, just get off your bike and be a mom. Like, why are you being so selfish? And of course that voice is in your head. But there's a lot of lessons I learned through this that I'll share for my closing thoughts, but I don't want to cut you off by any means.
Oh, that was, pretty much it. I mean, thank you for that. And to all those people, it's like, this is part of what makes you you and makes you like the amazing mother that you are, because, kind of like what Sadie was to you when you saw all this and inspired you to do it. Like, Brix is going to be like, my mom is a badass. Like, look at
that. Oh, my mom's fucking nuts. Like, she's crazy.
I mean, that comes with the territory. That comes with the territory anyway. But yeah, I mean, like, how cool for him to have you as his mother to like, see someone accomplish those things. So with that, I'm going to give you the floor. Hannah's closing thoughts.
Yeah, this came up on the bike for me a lot. And by no means am I suggesting that anyone does a full Ironman. That is not the point of this at all. But, I have a history. I have some parts of my life that are pretty dark that I look back in the past where whatever this feeling is, right? It's different every time, but it's similar in some way of this confusion, this self-doubt, this crossroads of who am I? Where do I go from here? I have lived in a place in my life where rather than trying to find the answers, I would like numb myself or avoid them so much by doing shit with my life that wasn't positive in any way, shape, or form, that would actually be very toxic for me, whether that's escaping or avoiding or using substances to just try and ignore, like, oh my gosh, and avoid that part of myself. And I think my message or hope is that anyone that is going through any situation like that in life, which we will all continue to have those moments until the day we die, right? They show up in different ways, but we don't get to a place in life where that stops. It just shows up and we handle it differently. Is that rather than leaning on, I don't know what your vice is, right? Whether it's a glass of wine or a box of chocolates or, leaning on something to try and make you feel better. Dive in, like lean into that discomfort and face yourself, because you're able to, well, I have been able to metabolize whatever that toxic energy is, or find the solution to what I'm struggling with in these really hard, dark places. And that doesn't mean doing a full Ironman, but maybe it's doing something that just challenges you a little bit longer, that it is an instant gratification, that you feel bad, you have a glass of wine, you feel better. Like, no. You feel bad, you train for 8 months for something or 6 months for something, and you get to face yourself and that demon every day until race day. And it's a lot of time to process, to understand, to find clarity, to just discover what this is and really like wrap your head around it. So next time, try something different, try something physical. We move the energy around our body when we're physical. We get to have a lot of time alone with our thoughts, which is the most terrifying place to be for all of us, but there's a lot of comfort that comes when we actually are able to sit with that and sit with ourselves, and a lot more true healing for me comes from that, where it's not going to be suppressed and come back and bite me in the ass at another time in my life in the future, which it inevitably would be if we just keep suppressing. This is the time to process and to face and find maybe the answers that we're seeking for. So that's what I hope this helps everyone understand, that this is about a physical achievement, of course, but it's so much more than that, that it helps me understand who I am and like what I'm here to do.
And you're doing it well, baby.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I love you. And I love everyone that's listening and that has supported the journey. It's been an immense amount of support and love, and I'm just so grateful I wouldn't be able to do it without anyone here.
Awesome. Well, I will let you go. You go and about your day, hug that baby boy, and I will see you on the flip side.
Thanks, sis. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.